Good evening. I am Reverend Sherry James, Senior Minister for Understanding Principles Church in Los Angeles, and this is our Thursday night Bible study, the Bible Hangout. And tonight we're doing something a little different. Last week I was in North Carolina and I presented two workshops, one on prosperity and one on healing the inner child. Last week I presented to the Bible Hangout attendees the workshop on the prosperity, and this week I want to talk about healing the inner child. Now we're going to go through the workshop material. If you're on my email list, you got the link for the material. There's one part of it that I'm going to have to modify and do a little differently because we did it as a circle, and I'll explain the circle when we get there. But I want to dive into this because this is an area that after I presented this material, I felt like this is an area that needs more attention. Like this is a really, 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 really important area. And so many amazing things came up from this experience. And it just let me know that this is an area where all of us need to do some more work. And it's on healing the inner child. So if you just agree with me that this class is transformational, that the Spirit of God is moving in through and as us right now, blessing us to receive this information. And I thank you, God, for whatever limitations there are with me as the human Sherry sharing this information, that your Spirit anoints this information and speaks to the hearts of the men and women who are watching this video. I thank you that this serves as a breakthrough for us, and that this brings us closer to you, and that you are glorified through this expression. In the name and nature of the one that we call the Christ. It is so, and so it is. All right, let me pull this up. Let's just start here. And I'm going to make this bigger. So I guess the first thing is I need you guys to tell me that you can see it. That looks like you can't see it. Hold on, is that? I think so.
We can see it, Sherry.
You can? Okay, good. So, this workshop I did as part of the women's retreat. I want to make sure all of it is on the page. That's what I'm looking for. So the first thing is just understanding, what is the inner child? That's the first question that we've got to answer. And Thich Nhat Hanh has a quote that says, "The cry we hear from deep in our hearts comes from the wounded child within." And then this next paragraph is from Life Labs. It's a website, so it's cited there. "Your inner child is the echo of the child you once were. We each have our own history, and we have all been influenced by our environment, events, and the significant people around us. Our inner child has stored those memories and their impact upon us." So the inner child, this is from Psychology Today. The inner child is real, not literally, not physically, but figuratively, metaphorically real. We were all once children and still have that child dwelling within us. We all get older, but psychologically speaking, this is not adulthood. True adulthood hinges on acknowledging, accepting, and taking responsibility for loving and parenting one's own inner child. So one of the things that I came to after going through this workshop and doing, putting this information together, because I'd never presented on the inner child before. One of the things that I came to is that there are things that happen in our experience when we are younger. Gotta sneeze. And in fact, there are things that happened in our experience when we're younger, and we make decisions about those things, and the decisions we make, we take as absolute truth, and then we act from that decision for the rest of our lives unless we have some reason to re-examine the decisions that we make. I'll tell you what I mean. When I love music. I love music. Love music. I have tons of lyrics in my head. Karaoke is like my favorite thing to do ever, like ever. So music was very important to me. It always has been. growing up, I wanted to play in the band. Also, growing up, my dad often said we can't afford it to just about everything. It was such a refrain in our house. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. Like, this is just over and over and over and over again. That's what it felt like. When I got to sixth grade, which in my school system in Houston, that was about the time that school began to offer training in musical instruments, meaning up until, for kindergarten through fifth grade, there wasn't any music training offered. You had choir, but nobody was, teaching you to play the piano or teaching you to play the horn or whatever. And I wanted to be in the band, and I wanted to play the saxophone. And on my own, without asking my parents, I decided we can't afford it. And I think I must have heard that, like, purchasing the instruments was an expensive endeavor, because I had my best friend who just had a birthday yesterday, my best friend from childhood. I knew that it had been a hardship for her parents to get her an instrument. So I think that maybe I knew that it cost a lot. And then I made this decision that, well, we can't afford it. There's so many times that things happen in our experience. It may or may not have been true. What I definitely know about my mom is that if I had expressed any interest in playing an instrument, even if it was a hardship, she would have done whatever she needed to make sure that I had an instrument to be able to play, to be able to participate in band. So there are many, 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 many decisions like that we make over the course of our lifetime. Now, tonight we're going to do it in regards to money, but honestly, it's in regards to health. It's in regards to happiness. It's in regards to a whole lot of stuff where something happened in our experience. We made a decision about it, and we've been walking in that decision, and we're now in our 30s, we're in our 40s, we're in our 50s, we're in our 60s, but we're still operating on the decisions we made before we were teenagers or when we were teenagers. And so healing the inner child is about going back and examining those decisions that are in keeping us from being our best selves. That essentially those decisions act like a governor on who we are and where we believe we can go. And if we never question those decisions, then they end up driving our lives. And we can't figure out why we can't have success in a particular area, but it's because we haven't done the work to examine the decisions we made before we knew what we know now. So that's why this work is so important. And the thing is that everybody has something to heal. None of us gets out of childhood, because all of us have a bigger vision of ourselves. And unless we were raised to be deeply self-reflective, and I think that there are very few people who were consciously raised that way. I think that people were encouraged, but to be raised with the type of introspection that's required to examine those decisions and to constantly call into question the things that we believe and to hold our own feet to the carpet. Many of us don't get to this kind of work until we're in our 40s, our 50s, our 60s. And it's not too late. That's the beauty of it. It's not too late. If you go ahead and do the work, you can get the fruit of what is inside of you. I also want to say a word about why this is so important. Before I started the recording, what I said to those that are sitting live is that the spirit never repeats itself. God never repeats itself. And what God wants to do through you, God only wants to do through you. So your divine assignment is unique to you. It doesn't belong to anybody else. And if you don't fulfill your divine assignment, it's not like it gets kicked down to the next generation. Your assignment is your assignment alone. So it's imperative that you discover who you are and then do the work to express that which is in you to express. We are here to demonstrate the fruit of God that is inside of us. We're here to demonstrate the fruit of God that is inside of us. one of the exercises that I had them do in the class, we did a gratitude exercise where everybody had a partner, A and B, and A took 2 minutes and described to B what they appreciated about B. So, Andrea, if you and I were partners, I would say, Andrea, what I really appreciate about you is your dedication. I really just love the way that you mother your adult children, where you give them space. And I would just go on the things that I appreciate about you. And these are people that know one another. But even if you don't know someone, because I partnered with someone, we had an odd number of people. And so I partnered with someone. And basically, I was able to say the things that I appreciate about her based on what I had learned about her, just being in the workshop with her for 2 days at that point. And then we stopped the timer and started over. And then the next person did the same thing. And so the B then turned to A and said, hey, here's why I'm, what I'm grateful for about you. And you can imagine how that felt. Everybody felt light. Everybody felt so good and so amazing. And what I followed up with is that it's easy to demonstrate God. All you have to do is get in communication with someone that you care about, even somebody that you don't care about, but you want to have a better relationship with, and begin to speak that gratitude for them. It's easy to demonstrate God. What takes the time is getting the fruit out of you onto the branches of your life. I'm not here just to be taking up space. I am here to demonstrate the fruit that I alone can demonstrate. Lots of people teach, but only I teach the way that God taught me and shaped me to teach. Lots of people sing, but only you can sing the way that you sing. Michael Jackson and Prince are both virtuosos in their own right, both amazing musicians and entertainers. But they each had a different assignment. They didn't have the same assignment. Even though they both sang, they both entertained, they both had something uniquely different to offer to the world. Your gift, as you're developing it, may look like other people's gifts, but you can trust that God does not repeat itself. And so you have the responsibility to find out, what is my unique voice? We heal the inner child, but so that we can uncover that authentic voice. We heal the decisions we made when we had a lesser understanding of who we were, so that we can do the work that God has called us to do. So this work is enormously important, enormously important. Any questions? And feel free to ask questions throughout, but let me know if there are any questions. So, I just explained why heal the inner child. Craig Lunsborough, I found this quote when I was putting this work together. He says, to abandon the child within means the adult without will be an adult in name only. And frankly, I can only name a handful of things that are that tragic. There are so many people that are adults in age only, but not psychologically. It takes work to uncover the things that are driving our everyday behavior. Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood says, the child is in me still, and sometimes not so still. Dr. Joe Dispenza. So this book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Great book. Great book. Recommend this. In this book, one of the things he talks about, it's not the subject of the book, but it's one of the things that he points in the book, is that children operate at a brainwave frequency called theta. What that means is that it's a very receptive brainwave state. When we meditate, our focus is to get to that theta level where we've completely relaxed the conscious mind. In the conscious mind, those of you that know this language from UFBL and from Unity, in the conscious mind, we think, we deduce, we conclude, we decide, we choose, we reject. There's all that happening. With children, there's very little of that happening. For them, they're, as Joe Dispenza would say, they're almost all subconscious mind, because they're just completely receptive. And this is up until about age 7 or 8. So at this level, we don't have a way to make decisions and filter what's real, what's true, what's valuable. You know, one of the fun games, I don't know that it's true so much anymore, but certainly when he was younger, Jordan would put the cover on his head and I would pretend not to be able to find him. And he really thought that I didn't know where he was as he giggled under the covers. You know, that, so for children like that, this idea of what's real and what's not real. One of the things we do in the car now that is, you know, I'm claiming this as a good game because I have to name it good. So we each take a car, and as we're driving, so I'm sitting in the front seat, and as we're driving, the cars talk to one another. So I'm voicing this car, and Jordan is voicing the car in the back seat for him. They don't have a way to filter what's real. They don't have a way to filter like what's valuable, what's true. So, but it doesn't change the fact that the conscious mind is still making decisions. It's still making choices about the world at that place and at this stage in development. And so what happens for us with the inner child is that a lot of those decisions, we never examine them. And so sometimes we make decisions about things that are limiting based on where we are when we were 5, 6, and 7, 2, 3, and 4. We're no longer in that age bracket, but that decision is still driving our experience. Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living. It is to call into question the things that we decided before we knew what we were deciding. What we find with a lot of addiction and a lot of aberrant behavior is that these unhealthy habit patterns were built from the conclusions and decisions that we made as children. And they end up imprisoning the gifts that God gave us to express. So we've got these unhealthy habit patterns that are driven by a decision I made when I was 7. I won't go back and look at the decision that was made, and I keep trying to band-aid it. And so unwittingly, we become like the seed that falls by the side of the road or on rocky ground or doesn't go in the soil deep enough to take root. Our purpose is to express God, to release the imprisoned splendor. And unexamined wounds, unacknowledged hurts, lingering grief, unaddressed pain block that expression. As you rescue and reparent your inner child, you become a vessel for the beauty and splendor of spirit that desperately wants to flow through you. And I want to share this poem. This is one of my favorite poems. This is Robert Browning. He is who introduced this concept of the imprisoned splendor. And he says, truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise from outward things, whatever you may believe. There is an inmost center in us all, where truth abides in fullness. And around, wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in, this clear, perfect perception, which is truth. A baffling and perverting carnal mesh binds it and makes all error. And to know, to be enlightened, rather, consists in opening out a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape, than in effecting entry for a light supposed to be without. If you listen to a lot of our music and the things that we consider our inspirational music, it's this idea of something being poured on us or given to us. And in reality, it is the light is already inside and I'm letting the light out. And so as I heal the wounds of my inner child, I expose that much more light that is already inside of me. Any questions, any thoughts, any aha moments? What is this bringing up for you? What is this bringing up for you? No, don't everybody speak at once.
Oh, so everybody's unmuted?
Yeah. Please unmute your, just be mindful of your background noise, but please unmute yourself. Yes.
Okay, my question is, what if it's a religious decision that,
Tell me, you got to be a
that
little, tell me
do
what you,
religious, decisions based on religion? Maybe you grew up in a certain kind of church. Does this count? Do they count for this?
I would think
Would they
so.
be hindering you?
I would think so. So some of the things that that we were taught, I can speak to my experience. Your experience may be similar to mine, but growing up, I was taught that God could be mad at you, and so for a long time, for me, spirituality or trying to be right was about trying to make sure that God wasn't mad at me. And
Okay.
so does that answer the question that you're saying, that you're answering?
Kind of like the guilt trip.
Yes. Yes. So I don't remember the exact thing, but I remember sitting in Reverend Della's class years ago. And Ray, you may remember this because I think you were there when this happened. And I don't remember what the specific insight was, but it was the realization that even at that point, decade plus that I had been studying New Thought, I still had a God outside of me. Do you get what? So God is in the sky. God is out there. I gotta pray
Oh,
to God, right?
mhm.
Those. So if I have to pray to God, there's a way that I act differently than if I believe that God is inside of me, and I don't have to go anywhere to get to God except to turn within to the presence of God within. So
Okay.
it's looking at, and when I say decisions, sometimes it's information that you were handed. I was handed that. That was part of the collective world understanding as far as the world that I grew up in. I'm always amazed by the people that I meet who were raised in New Thought. I'm thinking, boy, that just sounds like that would have been awesome.
But I guess my second question is, how do you know whether you know, and you're doing that, or you're just going against your supposed faith? You know? It's not,
Yes, that's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. You have to try the spirit by the spirit.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that whatever is your understanding of God, take your questions to that understanding of God. Help me to know that I'm on the right path for me. Help me to know that this is the right decision. This feels good, but it's so different from what I learned when I was growing up. How do I know I'm on the right path? No person is ever going to be able to give you that assurance. No minister is going to be able to give you that assurance. Only the indwelling Christ that lives inside of you is going to be able to give you that assurance.
okay.
And, I want to say one other thing about this. In my opinion, all religions are good when they point you to the presence of God inside of yourself. And so the question is, what method of getting to the God in me works best? Does it work best when I chant? Something happens when my prayer partner, Kim Yarbrough, she invited me to, it wasn't like a yogananda, I don't remember which one, but it was one of the like yogi type places. And the men sit over here and the women sit over here. And then we sit and we just chant all night. And so after I finished, I was like, that was interesting. That was different. That was, everybody's vegan. So you go eat dinner afterwards and everything is vegan. And I was like, this is interesting. Like, this is different. But what I realized is that that's just not the method that gets me to the center of my being. For someone else, chanting does that for them. And it's not to say that I won't find value in chanting in the future and looking up some of the practices of Buddhism or whatever, but it's to say that what works for me are affirmations. I know I can begin to speak the word of God. I can begin to speak scripture, and then add in my own words so that the words become true for me, and I am there. Or I can listen to some good music that reminds me that I have everything that I need, and I am there. So what you're looking for is what gets me to the center of my being fastest and the most consistent. That's my practice.
You say faster and what?
Faster and the most consistent.
Consistent.
Mm-hmm. Because you may have you may meditate once and it's good, but like every other time you meditate, it don't really work for you. Well, it's not your practice. It's not to say don't meditate. I'm just saying what you're looking for is what quiets me, what settles me down so that I can listen to the voice of God inside, so that I can hear the still small voice. And so that way you can free yourself to not need your practice to look like anybody else's practice. Yes?
So I'm hearing it as, in essence, like it's an individual receptivity to not just doing what, sometimes we go to a church or an event and other people seem to be experiencing something and we're not, because maybe that's just not our way of communicating. Maybe it's not that we're not showing the joy, maybe we're feeling it, or maybe there's another way that we will receive that individually.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
We are so afraid to experience God in a way that no one else has. We keep trying to conform to the way that other people experience God. And so we think that if we haven't shouted or thrown ourselves across a pew or run up and down the church, or they said this weekend, jerking and jumping. If you haven't done any jerking and jumping, then you ain't experiencing God. That's one way. That's one way. That's one way. That if you can imagine that God has its own unique language for you and you alone.
Yes, and I think that's what one of the things that one of the first Bible Hangouts, I'm kind of new here, but
yes.
Something you said really stuck with me when you said about your message. You said, if you don't receive something, then, just reject it. If it's not for you, if it doesn't resonate with you, because my past experience has been like, if the preacher says this is it, then this better be it. And It was very freeing to hear a minister say, this might not be it for you. It's okay to be receptive to the things that are individual.
Right. And if you get that God is unique as every person, every consciousness on the planet. So each person is hearing differently. It's, I don't sing, but I teach, right? So I teach, and I say, it was funny this weekend. I said, so I don't remember what I said. It was something, but it was like one of those like, ouch kind of moments. And I was like, yeah, I wanted it to sound like Deepak. Like I wanted it to like come out the way that Deepak comes out, where it's just so soothing. And it's like a little, it's like a word bath. I don't give you a word bath. Mine is a little bit of a cold shower. And so it's getting comfortable with the ways that you are different. Mary, wonderful gospel group, superstar gospel group. It was an interview, and I don't even remember where the interview was, but they were talking about coming up as gospel artists and then realizing that they didn't sound like Shirley Caesar and the Clark sisters and the other gospel singers that preceded them. And they talked about getting comfortable with the way that God sounded coming through them in the form of song. And we're so afraid to be rejected that we won't allow ourselves to be vulnerable and find out the way that God comes through us. I would love to say it the way Deepak says it, because I think it's just wonderful. That's just not what I sound like. Or Michael Beckwith. Oh my God. Michael Beckwith is just the bomb, right? That's just not what I sound like. That's not what I sound like. So there has to be this comfort with the way that God expresses through you. And that takes persistence, and it takes being in a safe space. In my opinion, this doesn't have to be ultimately true, but it's my belief. I believe you need to be in a spiritual community where you can be vulnerable and you have people around you who are cheering you on. I think that that's enormously important because it is very humbling to put on the cloak of greatness. And that may sound impossible, but it's humbling because it's scary and it's different. And the last thing we want to be is different. You know, it's why we go and we buy clothes that we see in the magazine or that we see on the mannequin, or that because we're afraid to just be us. But that's what we're called to do, is to be uniquely you.
Yes, and I would just say, as the receptor, as one in the congregation or the audience, sometimes the sweetest sound is truth, because no matter how it may come across, what's reaching my soul or the souls of others, like what I said, earlier that had reached me, what you said, even if you didn't say it in like a Deepak voice, but to me that was a sweet sound because it resonated with my spirit. So thank you.
Yes. Constance says, well, I like being different. Constance, I do too, but I find that it's learning to be different at a place that makes you uncomfortable. Our souls require expansion. And I'm not rejecting what you're saying. I'm just saying, and our souls require expansion. And if you are not feeling like, what the heck am I doing? You're probably not stretching enough. Ain't that deep? It was Brendan Burchard who said that. And when he said it, it was one of those like, oh, you're right. And he said that if everybody is cheering what you're doing, you're probably not living at the edge of your potential. And I was like, okay, because again, you want the fruit of what God wants to put out through you. The mango tree, if you want mangoes, you got to go to the mango tree. You can't go to the apple tree for a mango because that's not what the apple tree has. And the mango tree doesn't come bring you the fruit. You got to go to the mango tree. Now, how God does anything is how God does everything. And so that principle repeats, that there is the fruit in you that you are meant to demonstrate, that the world will be the path to your door in order to get. They will come to you because only you can give what you have. And they will seek you out because they want it the way that you give it. That's how unique you are and what your gift is supposed to do for you. And so if that is not happening at a level that feels true for you, that's your clue that you got more work to do. There's more healing to do, more healing of that inner child. Because, we all want to be seen and we all don't want to be rejected. And so we start hiding when we start fearing rejection. I don't want to give you a chance to reject me, so I don't put myself out there. Right. So I never have to deal with your criticism of me. So I don't even try that hard, or I go just enough, or I like to be in the background. And I'm saying, get out there. You were meant to be seen. You have fruit that only you can give, and that the world will beat a path to your door in order to get it. That's the part that takes time. So I can tell you, Jennifer, I really appreciate your openness as a student. I really love your enthusiasm. And I was so excited to get your email when you first introduced yourself to me. And, and I'm grateful. And then you've been here like every Thursday, just all like clockwork. And I'm grateful for that. It's easy to stir up the presence of God. All I have to do is begin to express appreciation. sincerely, and I will stir up the presence of God in you and me. That felt good for you. That also felt good for me to give that to you and to let you know what an impact you've had in my experience, even though we've only known each other for a short while.
Yes.
Right. What takes time is getting that fruit out on the branches. That's what takes the time. It's easy to demonstrate God. You can do that in an instant. In an instant. What takes the time is developing the confidence to be uniquely you. So anyway, it's 7:40. We are not going to get through all of this tonight, but I'm going to just share as much as I can. So this is the part that I don't know that we can do in a workshop setting in a webinar setting, because we did it in a workshop, but I want to explain what it is because I think it's powerful, which is holding spiritual space. So this is something that I learned from the prayer chaplain training that I went to a couple of weeks ago in Arizona. When you hold spiritual space, this is directly from the workbook, from the prayer chaplain training. It means to consciously call on the presence of God. Ask and it will be given you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be open. The way that I think about holding spiritual space. So one of my members went to the hospital earlier this week, and so I'm holding spiritual space for their healing. Let me tell you what I do in my mind, because for me, this is a visual thing. Holding spiritual space means that, for me, is that I am literally like holding a space in the universe open for healing to come through. Right? Because what happens is that each one of us are like a conductor for the energy of God. And what we conduct is according to the dominant thought in our minds. So if I hold the thought of love, and if I just sit in the space of love, and I just let concepts of love roll through my mind, and I just continue to hold the space for love, and I repeat whatever affirmations come to me about love, then I become a portal for love to come out of the invisible and into the visible. This is what holding spiritual space is. So when we did the workshop this weekend, I hope that explanation is clear. And if it's not, ask me and I'll say it a different way. But when we did the workshop this past weekend, what we were doing was holding spiritual space for healing from money-related trauma. Holding spiritual space for healing from money-related trauma. So I can share something that I guess I don't think it's too personal. So when I was in 11th grade, I won a trip to Israel. I was so proud. Like there were only in the city of Houston, there were 10 high school juniors that were chosen for this trip. My parents were divorced. My mom was struggling financially to, provide and give me what I needed. And so, having money for the trip was like, this was just an extra thing. And so she told me to go ask my dad. Well, I'm excited because the other part of this is the trip was sponsored by Mickey Leland, who was a congressman from Houston, Texas. And he and my dad were classmates at Wheatley High School. So I just knew that my dad was going to give me the money I needed to go to Israel. And when I went to him and I said, Dad, I won this trip to Israel, and I'm going to be there for 6 weeks, and we're going to spend the night in the desert, and we're going to climb mountains, and I'm just excited. I'm going to Israel. My daddy ain't been to Israel. Okay, let's just go right there. All right. So, at this point, I don't even think he's been out of the country. He's traveled a lot, but he's never been out of the country. And here I come at 16, Daddy, I won this trip, and I'm going to get to go to Israel, and I need some money to go. And he was like, you need to get it out of the child support. And, knowing the reality of what the child support was and how little it was that we were receiving as children, and then realizing that means I'm not giving you anything for this amazing trip that you want. To hold spiritual space for healing from money-related trauma. I don't know what the circumstances were. Perhaps my request came at a time when my dad just really just didn't have the money, you know, and the last thing he wanted was to try to figure out how to get the money, because he was always trying to figure out how to get the money for something else. I don't know what the circumstances were. And at 17 or 16, I'm not thinking of that. I'm thinking that I won this amazing trip and my dad doesn't even care enough to give me the money that I need to go on the trip. Now, in that space, what we did what was called a sacred circle. And different people shared experiences that happened to them in their own life relative to money. And what I got when we came out of that was that so many of us have money-related trauma, meaning that how, excuse me, how money was handled around us as a child, whether or not we had to beg for the things that we really wanted, or they were withheld from us for any number of reasons, but then we made decisions based on those experiences. And then those decisions, if we never had an opportunity where we examined them, they just carried us through life. And so here we are now in our 30s, we're in our 40s, we're in our 50s, and our 60s, and we're still being driven by the decisions that were made when we were 16, 15, 14, and younger. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does make sense to me.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
So holding spiritual space then is holding the space for healing from things like that. It's just to hold the space. Is, you know, some people's trauma might be buried beneath the surface. They may not even be present to it. Other people's trauma, they may be very present to it. Right? It might be like a sore on the arm that just gets picked every day, right? And what you hold to when you're holding spiritual space is that even though I don't necessarily know how to let go of this wound, I know that with God all things are possible. I don't need to know how it's possible. I only know that with God all things are possible. And so I am simply holding spiritual space that a different set of circumstances can happen for you. That's what holding spiritual space is about. So it was a very powerful part of the workshop. And so what we did was we formed a circle, and I acted as a leader, and each person had 2 minutes where we shared some type of healing, some type of money-related trauma that we wanted to be healed from. And what I just shared with you is what I shared. And each person is practicing deep listening. No one interrupts the other person. So as I'm telling my story, people are just listening, and they're listening deeply. And then when the 2 minutes is up, then it's next, and go to the next person. Then that person shares whatever they need to share, or they share nothing, but we hold the 2 minute space for them. And then we move around the circle. And then at the close of the circle, then we simply pray, bring everything to a prayerful close. Even just giving voice to the things that we experienced brought healing, just to give voice to it. It was like telling a secret that you had been holding inside of you, but that gave someone a peek into your heart. And so what the sacred circle allowed us to do was to honor what was happening in other people. The other thing it helped to do is to see that as painful as this thing has been that I've been carrying, I'm not the only one who's dealing with some type of pain. That there are other people who are also dealing with pain as challenging as mine, or even more challenging. It's a very, very powerful exercise. And so, like I said, I don't know how to administer it in a webinar setting, and certainly not one where it's going to end up on YouTube. So I won't go there with you guys, but I want to share with you something that you can do with friends. If you have a prayer partner, or you have just a circle of friends that you feel safe with, this is you have the material that's everything that you need to be able to do a sacred circle with them, and to then pray around it. And the sacred circle can be anything. When we learned it in the prayer chaplain training, everybody brought something to the training that meant something to them. And in that 2 minutes, they shared what it meant. So somebody might have brought a necklace. Another person might have brought a gift that their mom had given them that they kept with them. Another person might have brought a book or whatever, a book that they read that changed their lives. So there are many ways to do the sacred circle. But what it does is that it creates an intimacy and an allowing that I think is really powerful. Any questions before we move on?
And Reverend, I think what you were talking about, that whole thing with the prayer circle and just, it's like bringing it up. It's bringing it up so that it can move from out of your heart. And then, because if it's not on the surface where you can really see it, it's like you can't really heal it.
Right. Sometimes it's just getting present to it. There were things that people said in the circle that reminded me of things that I had forgotten. And it was like, oh boy, I need healing from that. Like I remember, I think I shared the story of the wanting to play in the band, but then hearing somebody else's story reminded me of the story with Israel and winning this big trip. And then it brought back all of those feelings of being in Israel and the other students who had gone, and seeing them have money to be able to do things, not a whole lot of stuff, but to be able to do stuff. And knowing that, I got this little money that my mom scraped together, that I got to make it work, for the rest of the trip, for the rest of the summer out of the country. And if anything happens, hopefully the friends that I travel with have enough money to help me out. So anyway, so one of the things with healing and that allows for healing is beginning to develop a literacy around what we feel. And this is, I think, the powerful work. So healing the inner child means that we've got to become present to what's still alive in us from our childhood traumas. So it's a new kind of literacy, one that many of us do not have. And it's a literacy around feelings. We need to be able to articulate how what happened to us does not support life in us. We need to be able to say how what happened did not support life in us. And I'll explain that. It's important that we be able to observe our experience, past or present, without mixing any evaluation. Now, I'm going to tell you, we're probably going to end at this point tonight. And what I'll do next week, I'll pick up the rest of this because I think that this is important. But it's what then I'm going to want you to practice this week, which is the observation without evaluation. This is key to healing. To be able to observe without telling a story about what you're observing. To see it as it is, not worse than it is and not better than it is, but as it is. So observation with evaluation. I got up this morning, I was trying to get to work. God, it was traffic everywhere. And I was really, oh my God, everywhere I turned, somebody got in front of me and slowed down. And that's observation with story. Observation without evaluation is, I didn't leave in enough time and I got to work late. Most people, when they answer the question, what happened to you? They answer according to the formula, the event plus my interpretation equals my story of what happened to me. And those two things are so married together, the event and the interpretation, that they have a difficult time separating the two. I can barely tell you what happened to me without telling you a story of what happened to me. So the interpretation usually includes some type of diagnosis of the other people involved. You know, he's lazy. Where's my book? Okay, I'm going to pull it out of my iPad. Hold on. He's lazy, or they don't care, and Krishnamurti says the highest form of human intelligence is the ability to observe without evaluating. I want to give you this. This is from Speak Peace in a World of Conflict. Speak Peace in a World of Conflict. So for many people, they do not have the ability. They don't know. They have the ability. They don't have the training to look at what's happening without diagnosing the other person. So I'm going to give you an example of what that looked like. So this is a mother dealing with a daughter. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So part of what happens when we are diagnosing or talking about what's alive in us is being able to explain it without diagnosing ourselves or diagnosing other people. So this is what Marshall says. He says, I was working recently with a woman who was concerned about something her teenage daughter didn't do. So I said, what was it that your teenage daughter didn't do? And she said, she's lazy. Now, can you hear the difference between the question that he asked and the answer that she gave? Y'all hear that? He said, what is it that she didn't do? And the mom answered, she's lazy. So he asked her again. He said, well, he said, I asked what the daughter does, and she told me what she thought the daughter was. And I pointed out to this person that labeling people, diagnosing them as lazy, leads to self-fulfilling prophecies. Any words we use that imply the wrongness of others are tragic, suicidal expressions of what's alive in us. They're tragic and suicidal because they don't lead to people enjoying contributing to our well-being. They provoke defensiveness and counter-aggression. Does that make sense? Tell me if this is landing.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So much of our language and the way that we communicate is rooted in right and wrong. So we have a hard time talking to another person whom we disagree with or whom we want a different outcome with without saying that they're wrong. And we're seeing this on a grand scale right now with Democrats, Republicans, and all the stuff that's happening in our country. And if you listen to either side of the equation, I don't care which side you sit on, the language is we're right and they're wrong. And the problem with saying that somebody is wrong is that it puts them on the defensive. They get out of their rational mind and now they're in the emotion of being called wrong. It's telling people what's wrong with them is suicidal and tragic. And besides, it's ineffective. We don't want these judgments to mix in when we try to tell people what they've done that we don't like. We want to go directly to the behavior without mixing in judgments. And so the first step in healing the wounded inner child says just get present to what happened without the story that we've been telling about it. We need to be able to say concretely, specifically, what happened to us without mixing in any evaluation. So when I was 16 and I went to my dad and I asked for the money, money that I needed to go on this trip, and he said, get it out of the child support. My response inwardly, I didn't say this, of course, to his face, because that's not the house I was raised in, is that he's selfish. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. And doesn't it matter to him that his daughter won this big trip? And that's my interpretation. The event is that I asked for something and the answer was no. And so sometimes you may just need to just practice taking a moment, retelling your experience without any evaluation. Can you retell your experience? In this instance, that we were dealing with money-related trauma, but can you retell your experience without any evaluation? Does anybody want to give that a go before we close for tonight?
Do you mean take a real experience?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, as you talk about the inner child, I really think about something that happened to me when I was really, really young.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I can retell it. I always have retold it without really, because it's just simple. I witnessed someone right in front of me get stabbed that was really close to me, and they died. I was so small that I was able to fit under a cabinet. And that's what happened.
Mm-hmm. 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 Right. Mm-hmm. And those are the facts.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the facts. Now, the story is the decisions I made because of that. I felt unsafe. I felt all of that other stuff is story.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Don't all jump at once.
Reverend Sherry, this is
Yeah.
something that I remember, that happened with me and my daughter, really. She was a teenager and, going through, what 16 and 17-year-old teenagers do. And it had to be, spirit that told me, I remember my sister, who was like 15 years older than me, no matter what, she would always tell me how beautiful I was. And sometimes I knew I didn't look good. I mean, my hair would be all over my head, and she would just say, oh, look, there's my gorgeous sister. Look, here she comes. And she would always make me feel so good. And so I started doing that with my daughter. No matter how she was acting, I would say, how beautiful. Hey, sweetie. And it was like 180 degrees. And I really don't know where the knowledge came, except for that's what my sister did for me. And so whenever I was feeling, and even now, when I'm not feeling 100%, I always think about that sister, because no matter what, she always, you're just so smart, you're so gorgeous, and I kept saying, is she seeing the same person I'm seeing? And so after a while, I began to believe what she said I was. And so I worked on that a little with my daughter. Now I still have problems back and forth. She's gotten older, but that came to me that sometimes when we can go back and remember when someone, with that inner child, that made that inner child feel special, made that inner child feel wonderful, that those are also good memories as well.
Absolutely. 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 Yes. I love that. That's great. It's a smart big sister.
Yes.
Did she ever say why she did that?
No, she was 15 years older, and a lot of times people at first thought she was my mother, because my mother always had her babysitting me. I was always with her. Whenever she went on to movie dates, my mother would make her take me. I don't know why, but she did. But as I grew older, as I grew older, and even now, she was always the person that I felt I could go to for anything. I mean, when girls were wearing new style, she lived in New York and just had a regular little blue collar jobs. She didn't finish college, she finished high school, but I could never ask her for anything that I didn't get. I mean, she just would always come up with it. And she would, she passed in 1978, but she was always that special person for me. When anything went wrong, I knew Kitty would make it better.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Wonderful. So I missed a comment. Joe said, synchronicity. I found a picture of me at different ages, all under 10, that I used to send Reiki to. I was going to start again, but put it to the side again. Well, pick it up. Pick it up. For a few reasons. One is that, Dr. Brenda just shared a really beautiful way of healing is to remember those things that were healing in your experience. What were the bright lights? Sometimes we're only present to the dark lights in our experience. And there were many bright lights for all of us, because none of us would have gotten to where we are had there not been those bright lights. So just reflecting on those and remembering that love and calling it forward stirs it up inside of us again. It brings up those feelings and it keeps those feelings alive inside of us. And for the length of time that we have that alive inside of us, we are not giving life to the things that don't support life in us. And so the same thing to you, Joe, with the pictures of yourself under the age of 10 is just to speak healing words. Or I know what Reiki is, but I don't know a whole lot about it. I've actually had a Reiki session, but so whatever that is, but my version of that would be, healing words to that little girl. You're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're worthy of, and just continue to give those words to her, or whatever. I'm saying that's what I would do, but you're saying Reiki and I'm saying do that. I'm saying yes, pick that up. So where we'll pick up next week is to finish what we started. So what I want you to practice this week is observation without evaluation. Observation without evaluation. Pick a situation that is tense, right? One that is a challenge for you. So for example, when I taught this information previously, I had someone in my class who was going through a really tough time with a family member. And it was so hard to separate and see the family member as anything other than the way that the family member had been seen. That because of all the things that the family member had done, it was so hard to just observe without evaluation. It's very easy to look at situations which we don't have any emotion mixed in. But if you really want to make this work, go to those deeply emotional situations where there are fears involved or there's anger involved. And that's where you want to practice. Can I observe what's happening without evaluating the people involved in it? Can I talk about what's going on without implying or even or saying explicitly that the other party is wrong? This is really, really, really important work. And it is key to separating you from the things that are traumas in your experience, and to begin to hold the space for healing for your inner child. Any questions?
I just had one quick. I know we're wrapping up here. A little bit, backing up a little. In its practice and intention, is holding spiritual space the same as prayer?
It's a type of prayer. Yes, it is. It's a type of prayer. It's like intercessory prayer, where you're interceding on someone's behalf. Okay. And you can intercede on your own behalf, but the idea is that you're interceding, that I am, it's a type of prayer for sure. But I think the intent behind, at least as I understand it from Reverend Leilani, who taught this in the prayer chaplain training, that you may be sitting with someone, and might be you, maybe yourself, but you may be sitting with someone who just received a diagnosis, and they've got all kinds of fears about what's been told to them, and they are just engulfed in the fear. To hold spiritual space is to say, you know, I know that with God all things are possible. So I'm simply going to sit here, even while you're in this fear and you're feeling this, all of what comes up with this diagnosis. I'm going to sit in a space where a different set of circumstances can be possible. I'm going to sit in the space of possibility. I'm not going to get wrapped up in the fear with you. I'm going to sit here in the space that healing, perfect health is possible for you, and it's the reality of you, and it can express right now, even if you've been given a diagnosis. Now, you can do that for yourself, but you can also do that for someone else. Reverend Jean Dade Batchy, who is phenomenal. Like, I can't believe, I knew she was good because I have some really awesome teachers, and I'm really proud to be next to the people I'm next to in the Universal Foundation for Better Living. But this past weekend, I got a chance to really experience her. She shared a story of she was getting ready to go to Japan. She went to the doctor, and she said the doctor had the nerve to try to tell me I had the big C. And I'm going to tell you what she did. Where's her? Because I want to give you the exact affirmation that she used. Here it is. This is her workbook. She said, so the doctor said, you got the big C. And she's like, wait a minute, I'm getting ready to go to Japan. And I'm going for like a couple of weeks. Like, she's like, hold up. And so she was like, well, listen, I expect good and great things to happen to me this day and every day. And God will set me on high because I know his name. Right. So that was her affirmation. And she said every day when she was in Japan, and every time she thought about it, she had these affirmations here. I'm going to read to you. God is life. I am life. God is light. I am light. God is love. I am love. God is power. I am power. God is peace. I am peace. God is beauty. I am beauty. God is joy. I am joy. God is substance. I am substance. And she just read those 8 statements over and over again. Life, light, love, power, peace, beauty, joy, substance. God is that. I am that. God is that. I am that. She came back from Japan a couple weeks later, went to the doctor. No detection of anything in her body.
Wow.
We have the ability to heal anything. So we can intercede on our own behalf, or we can intercede on behalf of someone else. That's available to us.
Very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I see that now. Thank you for explaining further.
I want to give you one other thing that she gave me. She was so good. She was so good. And like I said, I've been going to the women's retreats. I've been knowing Reverend Jean forever. So the law of precipitation. So this is what she gave us. So this is a collective prayer, and we did it together, but I do it by myself now in the morning. And it's Almighty I Am. And so you do it 3 directions. This is what it sounds like. Almighty I am, Almighty I am, Almighty I am. Almighty I am, Almighty I am, Almighty I am. Almighty I am, Almighty I am, Almighty I am. And it's just summoning the name of God, summoning the presence. The presence is everywhere evenly present, right? It's everywhere evenly present. What's not consistent is my awareness. My awareness might be somewhere else. My awareness might be on the condition. But with the sound of my own voice, I can bring my awareness to the presence of God in me. Oh, it was good. It was good. It was a good weekend. It was a good weekend. So anyway, I bless you. I thank God for you. And I will see you guys next week. We'll finish what we started. So this week, work on observation without evaluation. Observation without evaluation. Nisi says, is it the law of precipitation? So I looked up the law of precipitation, and I got to tell you, this is what I pulled. Because like I said, Reverend Mary was the first one that introduced it to me. And hold on, I'm looking for my notes because I did a Google search on it right when she said it. Because as soon as she said it, I recalled Reverend Mary talking about it. So this is what I have. I have the law of precipitation is where spiritual energies are drawn out of the universal and coalesced in matter. An alchemist precipitates a desired object. So it's about instantaneous manifestation. That I have the ability in this moment right now to produce what I need. And so the affirmation that Reverend Jean taught us is, I am the law of precipitation in action right now. Thank you for gold. She always talks about she's manifesting gold. What I said, because I'm working on getting a new car and got it. Hello. I am the law of precipitation in action right now. I thank you for my new car. What I shared on the prayer call, I guess I should tell you, we have a mastermind prayer call that we started a year ago, 2 years ago now, and it's still going. So if you're interested in it, we do it every Thursday night at 6:00 before the Bible Hangout. So to precipitate means to hasten, to cause to happen, to hurry suddenly. So I'd gotten over half of the money that I needed for my new car, and I still needed the rest of the money. And I was like, okay, let me get to work. I sat down, I prayed, I developed a plan, and I started working my plan. Well, the car is ready, and now it's like, okay, come on with the rest of your money. And I didn't have the rest of the money, and I was like, all right, God. And so I felt the worry coming up inside of me. I was leaving work on Wednesday. I felt the worry coming up inside of me, like, okay, like it's going to be time to pick up this car next week and it's not going to be ready. Like meaning the car's going to be ready, but I'm not going to be ready. And then I was like, I am the law of precipitation in action right now. Thank you for my new car. I am the law of precipitation in action right now. Thank you for my new car. And I just said that as I drove my old car out of the garage. I got on the street and made one phone call. And what I needed to basically pick up my car, I think tomorrow or Saturday, came through. So the whole plan that I had, that I was working to like produce the rest of the money needed for the car, didn't happen at all. And so the law of precipitation is about instantaneous manifestation. It is that I need it in this moment. I need it right now. I don't need it tomorrow. I don't need it 3 weeks from now. I need it right now. So does that answer your question, Nisi? Oh, thank you. And I got to tell you, I'm so excited. Okay, so that's the other thing. So I've been doing Dave Ramsey because my whole thing is debt-free living. So I got a Toyota Prius plug-in. So and you know, and I'm a luxury car girl. I gotta tell y'all, I love me some Mercedes and I love me some BMWs. But in this season in my life, where I'm building a business and building assets, there's no room for all of that. So just anyway, I'm rambling now, but thank you. I will see you next week. Observation without evaluation. Work on that. I can't tell you, we didn't really get to it because, you know, in a classroom setting, we'd be able to like go back and forth and I get a little bit more feedback and you know, y'all are presenting like, you know, perfect students and I appreciate that. But I know that if I struggle with observation without evaluation, we all do. So anyway, I bless you. I thank God for you. Nisi says guilty. Yes, I'm telling you, I know it. Listen, if you're looking at anything that's happening out in the political arena, I'm assuming that there are probably not any Trump supporters that are in the Bible Hangout, right? I know, because I got to work on myself looking at all this craziness going on, that the observation without evaluation. So I'm just going to say, I know that it's an issue. So anyway, have a great night. I love and appreciate you. I bless you to be a blessing, and I will see you in 7 days. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.